Welcome back to Against the Cage, your home for all the latest MMA news, as well as the best exclusive interviews that your heart desires. My name is Jake Aryeh. I'm joined by my esteemed co-hosts Scott Fontana and Erich Richter. And guys, right after we wrapped last week's show, we were talking about the 322 card in Madison Square Garden, which was revealed that night. We found out that Islam Makhachev would be going up in weight to fight Jack Della Maddalena for the welterweight title. In our co-main event, Zhang Weili will be taking on the flyweight champion Valentina Shevchenko in what would almost be a champ-champ fight. Zhang Weili relinquished her title at strawweight, as well as Carlos Praches will be taking on Leon Edwards in a pretty fun fight going on at Madison Square Garden as well. So, guys, what is your immediate reaction to these top three fights on the card? Scott, I'll start with you. What's your reaction to these fights?
Well, I mean, I thought you put it pretty well in calling it basically champ versus champ fight for the women's title fight. But this is basically both of them are essentially champion versus champion. They both were dominant champions, Zhang Weili and Islam Makhachev, who just vacated the title in order to move up in weight. This was not said explicitly, but it sure seems like the effort now is for the UFC to avoid having two champs because of how much it ties up weight classes. So, especially with these two champions in particular, who are not always the most active of champions. So, yeah, for all intents and purposes, this is champ versus champ. I think it's a fantastic way to do it. It's unfortunate because I think they robbed themselves of some promotional heat for it. I'm actually curious how much sizzle we're going to get from kind of, maybe the feeling of the New York crowd, because these aren't necessarily the four most charismatic members of the pound for pound picture.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would tend to agree
Totally
with
fair.
that. Eric, what about you? What was your first reaction to it?
First reaction is a good fight for JDM. Islam Makhachev's coming up in weight here. It's a good fight for him in terms of reach. Like, a lot of eyeballs are going to watch, especially at MSG. And this is JDM, and for my jiu-jitsu community friends, CJI was this past weekend. Craig Jones is one of his jiu-jitsu coaches. And Craig Jones has kind of written the book recently on how to deal with wrestlers, particularly Dagestani wrestlers. We saw it work successfully. Bilal Muhammad famously trained over with Habib Nurmagomedov and Islam Makhachev's camp.
But also an American.
Also an American for sure, but the style of wrestling that they're going for, where it's high pressure and heavy on the front foot, Craig Jones released the video that says "just get up." That's it. That's how you just get up. And it's funny, and we'll see how it works against the top level, the guy at that camp, right? Islam Makhachev is that guy. And it's the whole card's loaded. I actually love the fight for Leon Edwards against Carlos Praches. I don't know what the odds are for that one. I don't know if they're released or not, but I'm definitely going to be interested in betting Leon in that fight. Carlos Praches, good fighter, no disrespect to him, but I think Leon Edwards, former champ, this is a good opportunity for him to get back on the win column, which I think he needed more than anything.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
don't forget, there's a lot of fights that are going to be added to this at some point. We only have 3 confirmed fights, plus the Aaron Blanchfield versus Tracy Cortez reported bout that will probably be somewhere, on the prelims or something like that. Could sneak onto the main card. You never know.
I believe there were some unconfirmed reports of Bo Nickel fighting Rodolfo Vieira. I don't know how true that is. That was an unconfirmed fight, but it was taken by a lot of the aggregators as fact. So we'll see if that ends up happening.
That doesn't mean anything, but yeah,
doesn't mean a whole lot, but I'm definitely interested in the matchup.
I appreciate the clarification, because I saw a notification about that, and I got suckered into thinking that was confirmed. So we'll
unconfirmed.
Okay. Thank you for that. No, but I definitely agree with what you guys are both saying. To Scott, what you mentioned about first off clarifying that I said these are the fights. Top 3 fights of the card. That's as it sits right now. Like, who knows? Like, Leon and Carlos, that could be the opener for the main card if some more fights are added. But I definitely agree with what you were also saying earlier about maybe it does take a little bit of the heat off of this, not having it being those champ fights. Like, I definitely would be more intrigued as a fan having Islam potentially having 2 belts over his shoulder as opposed to one of them only having
Zhang Weili, same deal.
Yeah, absolutely.
One thing I want, why don't especially if they're like vacating the belt the second that they walk into the octagon, just an idea for the UFC, and they can pay me for this after the fact, but since they don't technically vacate until they enter the octagon, they should bring the belt out with them when they walk out. Just a thought, and maybe like, give it to the referee and
But
like
that's
maybe
not
do it
true because Islam already vacated and there's a new champion. It's not even the same with him.
That's true. Yeah, you're right.
If there wasn't a new champion, then I understand what you're saying. In the same case, I believe for Zhang Wei Li, unless it ends in a draw between Mackenzie Dern and Virna Jandiroba, one of them hopefully will be holding the title. I don't think anyone really wants to see a draw in that fight. I think most people are agreeing on that one.
It seems the belt is in fact vacated now, right? But and one thing I wanted to go back to is, I don't know how much these fights and these personalities in particular are going to, jazz up the New York City market, but the UFC is going to make bank at the gate. They're going to make so much money. It doesn't really, like, they can kind of do whatever they want to, and they're going to make a lot of money here.
Yeah, I mean, UFC events are expensive, and MSG is an exception in terms of how expensive
And
it is.
people keep paying.
Yes, and people keep paying. It's what's it? So, supply and demand. There we go. I was looking for the word. Supply and demand. All right.
Absolutely.
But talking about the UFC and MMA as a whole, there wasn't really any big promotion MMA over a Labor Day weekend. Of course, there was the Misfits card. Dillon Danis, who Erich Richter had spoken to, he won his light heavyweight Misfits MMA title. But
sacrificial lamb, as he projected.
Yeah, you know
19-second submission, pretty rough look for. I mean, he had said he's like, well, I'm 2-0 too, and I was like, all right. And then that guy comes in and immediately starts grappling with him and doesn't know how to grapple like Dillon. And it was a tough watch, but another win for Dillon. And who knows, maybe we'll see him in the UFC in like 2 years.
It's a little tough to draw so much about that performance, but he does still have his jiu-jitsu. I guess you could say that. So
2 years is a long time. Dillon's not getting any older. He's or any younger. Excuse me. He's like 33, I believe now. So he's got to start moving.
Yeah, we'll see if he ends up fighting Tony over there.
He should fight again before the end of the year.
I would tend to agree. Yeah, try and make up for lost time if you.
It would be crazy not to.
Yeah,
he didn't. That fight was nothing. Nothing happened.
It was tough to say he could have done too much better, I guess. But
if he beats Tony Ferguson by the end of the year, I'm interested.
Yes. Yeah. We'll see what happens. We'll see what happens there. But as I was saying, there wasn't any big, UFC PFL fights over the past weekend. So as far as those two promotions, really the only thing that's been going on is Dana White's Contender Series, which is currently in season right now, this past Tuesday and, the one before that. So I thought it'd be a good opportunity to finally get the chance to talk about it with you guys. And just from a show of hands, who here regularly watches the Dana White's Contender Series?
Oh yeah,
looks like it's just Erich.
Series.
All right. Well, before we get to Erich, I guess I'd give my thoughts on why Dana White's Contender Series necessarily isn't for me, and I think honestly it has to do with what makes MMA and UFC special to me is sort of the story building around it. Like I definitely got into the sport because of that. I didn't get into it necessarily because I enjoyed breaking down watching the technical aspects of it and the sporting aspect of it so much. I feel like people kind of get drawn in from the characters in it, caring about the fighters and seeing if they'll win, seeing if they'll lose. And to some degree, even though I'm a few years into it, that's definitely still an important factor for me. So I don't really get too much of that with Contender Series. I feel like I want to know who the fighter is before I watch them fight, or if I'm going to spend the time to watch them fight,
That's an interesting point. I hadn't even really thought about that element of it, but I think that's an underrated element. I think you're right, Jake.
Yeah, so that's it for me. But Scott, I noticed you didn't raise your hand. How about you? What's your reasoning for why you do or don't watch it?
So for me, a lot of it is bandwidth. In my role here, with the New York Post, I have to keep my eye on the MMA world, but also I have a lot of other responsibilities with the New York Post as well. So when it comes down to it, I will dedicate my weekends to keeping up with what's going on. But a Tuesday night, I mean, I've got very little time other than the days I work where I can kind of do other things. And Tuesday nights tend to be a night where I do other things. It's not that I wouldn't like to watch. I'll poke my head in from time to time. Someone tells me something happened, I'll find it. Usually they're pretty good at sharing on socials, hey, look at what you missed here, right? So I get a lot of highlights if I really want to. But one of the things that I think kind of goes hand in hand a little bit with what Jake was saying as far as kind of that story building and that kind of thing, and part of the allure that's not there, which I didn't really tap into, but it makes a lot of sense here. Just the fact that I would like it to be more of an actual organization, right? Like right now, it's just one-off fights to see who's gonna get Dana White's approval to be signed to the roster on that particular night. Dana can sign everybody, or he could sign one. He's signed as few as one, right? I don't think he's ever had one time where he signed nobody, but it depends on his mood, how well they did, that kind of thing. There's a lot of politics in there as well. But what I would be interested in, guys, and I don't know how you feel. I'm curious how either of you would feel. If the UFC made Contender Series into, let's say, to borrow a baseball term, like a triple A for prospects, right? Like the UFC's own triple A organization, where almost like a mega regional, where they have their prospects that they're getting in that would be on Contender Series, maybe some of the ones they sign too, keep them fighting there a little bit. And then when they graduate out, maybe they can even have belts and that kind of thing, and then just go up and say, okay, this is someone who's really hyped up on our farm system. They're coming in with a lot of momentum. There's your story, Jake.
All right. Well, I guess my one question with that, and I might seem like a bit of a casual here, but the UFC does also have different, like Cage Fury, I believe, is on UFC Fight Pass. Does that sort of count as a minor league, or is obviously it's probably different management is the thing?
They are owned. They're wholly owned by their organization. Do they? They'll allow their talent to let go essentially if the UFC wants them. There tends to be out clauses for them to be able to get out of contracts and have opportunities. I'm not familiar with every single person's particular, but tends to be that if the UFC has got you on their radar, they tend to be able to get you out of there. And probably part of that has to do with the friendly relationship of having them on Fight Pass and that kind of thing. But I'm talking specifically about, and this would unfortunately, yes, push out of business places like CFFC and LFA, which I'm not necessarily in favor of. This is the downside to what I'm talking about. But it would be interesting if all of those organizations were able to come together and then be able to have all of their talent competing in a bigger way even than they had. And I think that would be easier for people to follow along with.
Yeah, that would be fun. That's the most fun option. I love that option, Scott. Yeah, if we did that, that would be fantastic. Get everybody from CFFC, LFA, Octagon, be fantastic. That'd be such a good TV show. Replace Ultimate Fighter with that.
One of the things I would hate, though, and I'm obviously I'm proposing this idea, right? But one of the things I would hate is losing the personality that some of these organizations have, right? They have their own distinct feel, and the UFC has its own very distinct and sometimes sanitized feel, and that is not always the most fun, right? I think the UFC is very slick. They make a very clean product in terms of the way it's presented, but I think sometimes they have a little less fun with the actual fighters, right? A lot of the people on air are having fun. Like DC has his fun, right? Daniel Cormier knows how to have a good time, and he likes to liven things up. And obviously Joe Rogan is his own personality. But it would be interesting to have, other than that, like the settings and that kind of thing, which we get with those regional promotions. You would lose that soul. So that would be the hard thing.
Yeah, but you know what, I do like the concept of it. Obviously, like you said, like there's some things hidden that might have some negatives. But no, it could be interesting considering like that's probably something that the UFC would promote during their shows, to be like, hey, by the way, like if you didn't know, this champion of our AAA league, no name that we have right now, of course, for it, but our champion for this thing is fighting on this time. Here's a quick little synopsis about him. I think that could draw fans in and build up the personalities of the sport. But I do agree, like keep some of the promotions that have their own personality out of it.
Let me throw another one at you. This kind of came to me as we were talking here. Instead of killing those promotions, right, like I've suggested, because again, I would hate if that happened. I like LFA, I like CFFC, I like that we have these organizations, Cage Warriors. We were going over to Europe, Octagon, KSW is its own very different thing as well, which is not really they don't really do things with the UFC per se, right? I wouldn't want those to go away. But what could be interesting about the ones that are partnered with the UFC and do air on Fight Pass and that kind of partnered in that way, maybe make clearer stakes for those fights that, hey, winner of this, Dana White's got his eye on them. He wants to sign the winner of this kind of thing, right? That could be an interesting way to do it as well. And that gives you a little bit more storyline, Jake.
Yeah, definitely. So there's a few different avenues that if we're talking about like what could, the UFC do to make this sort of concept more interesting, I think that those are some viable options there. But Eric, we haven't gotten to your love for Dana White Contender Series, or at least your interest in it. So could you talk to us a little bit about why you like Dana White's Contender Series and why you watch it?
First thing that brought me over to Dana White's Contender Series was the betting side of it. So I was like doing a lot of wagering and stuff on like the lower level fights. There's pretty beatable lines, just to be totally honest. Pretty beatable lines if you do even any tape study on these fighters. Like, so this past Tuesday, there was actually a lot of really interesting fights. John Paul Labassiani is a name to remember. He was the headliner for this card. His father was a BJJ black belt. So he's got the family lineage. Also, like the crowd was kind of crazy. Like there were so many UFC fighters that know him and love him, and the crowd was kind of going nuts. It was
Apex?
like Aljamain Sterling. Yeah, Aljamain Sterling was there. There was a lot of UFC. I believe Mackenzie Dern was there as well. There was a lot of UFC talent there that were cheering him on. So that was interesting. But like the thing that brought me in was sometimes, and this is which is what brought me in, but also after watching it, feel like could be a detriment. Some of these matchups are too lopsided or feel too lopsided. Like Jack Congdon, who fought John Paul Labassiani, kind of had. I mean, that was a real tough matchup for him. Like there was a clear divide in the odds as well. Labassiani was a massive favorite. He was actually such a big favorite that most of the sports books took it off the betting market at one point during the card. So like the betting odds were so outlandish on that one, and John Congdon got absolutely slept flatlined bad while standing up. It was eerily similar to the head kick, the Joaquin Buckley knockout.
Impikasanganai,
yeah, that one. Very similar to that one. So yeah, I mean that's what brought me in. What I would like to see, what I like about what they do production wise is it's 5 fights. This weekend's card is 14 fights long. I'm not watching all of that. That's way too much. The card starts at 12, and 8 of those 14 fights, 8 of those 14 fights are projected to go the distance. This is going to be a long day of fights on Saturday.
Yeah.
Like that's just too long. That's just too long of a day. 12 to 6, you're going to be watching those fights. That's a lot.
But you get Saturday night back.
You get Saturday night back. I guess that's an option. I want to go to the beach, man. Like
that's true. The weather is still nice.
So I'm like trying to go to the beach on Saturday, and I'm like 12, 14 fights, all like over half of them are going the distance. So I like 5 fights. I get 5 fights on a Tuesday. There's really not that many. There's not that much sports that usually happen on Tuesday. There's no football even during football season. So I mean, every now and then you'll get like a one-off college football game, maybe the MAC or whatever if you're interested in that. But for me, I would like shorter cards, and I said this during the media rights stuff. I would like shorter cards. 12 fights, I think, is too much. 14 is crazy.
Okay.
I like 12. I think 12 is okay, Eric. 12 is something we were all accustomed to, going way back to the Spike days, right? Like now, granted, a lot of those fights were not airing on TV in those days. Jake, you understand? There was a day in time where you did not watch the prelims. They weren't even available to you.
I have
heard
about this.
The way you saw those. But do you know how you saw the prelim fights?
No.
They would inject them into gaps in time when the fights went too short on the pay-per-view. So you'd get like a bonus filler fight instead of some sort of like analysis or like a movie pitch or something like that. You would just get, here's a fight you missed from earlier. And it was always a banger because you missed it and you didn't know, and it was shorted up. Yeah, it was amazing. Like I love being able to watch all the prelims, and like I'm glad we have that ability. But I really do miss those days because you could watch the pay-per-view and you didn't know what happened earlier. And you'd sometimes get as many as like 8, 9 fights that just got crammed into 3 hours. And they were all bangers. It was a wonderful time.
That is interesting. I would like, I might see if that could be an interesting homework assignment to go back and see what that was like if that's still available. how they
I
played
don't think I don't think they do that. I'm
Oh.
sure if you looked hard enough, there are probably ways to find that.
Okay.
But other than that, yeah.
Maybe on Fight Pass.
Yeah, maybe an extra credit assignment.
I don't know if they're on Fight Pass like that. I think Fight Pass
maybe.
they
Might
do it
be on
differently,
some-
but maybe not. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe we should go. I'll look around. I'm gonna dig around,
Yeah.
and if I find one like that, we're gonna dial that one up. That'll
Find
be
some
a
sketchy
homework
Russian
Monday.
links. Alrighty. But Scott, you are someone.
We would never do that.
No, of course not. I'm never advocate for anyone to do that either.
Terrible idea.
Scott, you are someone who likes to sift through data, as we know every week that there are fights on the weekend. You have our fight rating, which you have. I've seen the spreadsheets before, incredibly impressive. You've done a little bit more digging into some data, and obviously our your event ratings take into account a lot of fighters that come in from Dana White Contender Series into these cards. There's a lot of fighters that come from Dana White's Contender Series that are in the UFC now. How do you see Dana White Contender Series fighters affecting UFC cards in that regard?
There's definitely been a downgrade in the overall quality of a lot of the fight nights, basically throughout the ESPN era, and mostly on the other side of the COVID, right? That changed everything in so many ways, and frankly, there has been a concerted effort when they go on the road to make sure that these cards are booked pretty well, top to bottom, with some decent talent. When they go to the Apex, it's almost like, just throw in the leftovers into there, throw a decent fight up in the top, and call it a day. And I don't think there has been a distinct change in that from year over year, from last year to this year. But what we do have is much fewer fights happening at the Apex. There's only been 8 cards there this year. There were 17 a year ago. We're not going to hit close to that number, which is a good thing, right? It's a good thing for, I think, everybody. It's probably even the UFC, I would have to think. They want their product on the road. I think it's better when it is, and they must as well. But yeah, like on the whole, the average of let's say event ratings from the UFC Apex cards last year to the Apex cards this year are like almost identical. So they're still doing the same thing, just less of it.
Fair enough.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's good to know.
And listen, we love, obviously, the shows going on the road. That's another reason I think that I forgot to mention as to why Dana White's Contender Series isn't necessarily something that I watch, is like the atmosphere. It's in the Apex. I'm sick and tired of the Apex. I know that the fights are crazy, and like Eric, as you mentioned, like there are flatline KOs, and maybe obviously that probably has something to do with the matchmaking and the thesis of the show. Like this performance
showcase matchups.
Yeah, this performance determines whether or not you're going to get signed into the UFC, so better get a knockout sort of deal. But yeah, I think that is probably something that draws me away from it. But going off of that, how do you think that it has – have you seen any change in terms of the card quality differing from, when we had Apex shows, more of them versus now for the on-the-road stuff, or is the on-the-road cards sort of the same as it was? I phrased that terribly.
I think I know what you mean, Jake.
Yeah.
On the road, they've definitely, like I said, they've made a concerted effort to do that, to get better quality cards out there. I don't know that from fact. I'm talking about from you. You can look at the numbers on the ranking of the fighters there, and that is qualitative in terms of taking someone's quantitative in terms of taking someone's qualitative data, right? Or Fight Matrix, they do use data to make their rankings, so there's still data elements to that as well. But the point is that they are definitely doing a better job of putting together competitive matchups with like UFC caliber talent, we could call it, now when they go on the road than when they weren't going on the road. I think it's clear.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think that the matchmaking has been really good on the road. I mean, we all know that they're super committed to putting on good cards in the Middle East. Those cards have been fantastic, and they've all been on on the whole, they've been on ABC. So that's something that's been interesting. But yeah, I mean, even this card this weekend, it's a fight night in Paris, and it is fantastic. And before we jump to that, if it's okay with you guys, I just want to run through kind of like what we saw at Contender Series, just to recap really quick. Mandel.
The one the other day, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, on Tuesday. Mandel Nalo fighting over at TriStar with Faraz Zahabi, 36 years old, on Dana White's Contender Series. As far as I can remember, is the oldest person to ever be on the show. earned a contract, really good leg kicks. I believe he fought over in Bellator previously. So he earned a contract. And
How
then
old was he again?
36 years old.
Wow.
I think Danielle
Yep.
Wolf, who was signed basically as a 45-pounder, I think she might have been almost 40 or 40. So, but as far as men's talent, that's possible.
Yeah, Nala's a lightweight, and he looked good, really good leg kicks, and then won by knockout, which was pretty impressive. Michelle Olejniczak's brother, Cezary Olejniczak, was also the co-main event. He looked really good. That was a weird fight though. His opponent got clipped in the first like 10 seconds and shot for a takedown, and then kind of got stuck going for a single leg and just got hit with unanswered like rabbit punches. And originally the referee stopped it, saying that they were hit to the back of the head, and they weren't. So it was like a kind of like a chaotic scene afterwards because everyone thought it was going to be a DQ, and then it wasn't. And then he ended up calling it a knockout, saying that upon review the fighter was unconscious. It was weird. It was weird. The right person won. That those all's well that ends well. But the other two fights were interesting, but not that interesting. The last three were worth really worth the attendance.
All right, all right. Well, thank you so much for that breakdown, Eric. I mean, we didn't have a card 2 breakdown coming off the heels of
there you go.
this
Bonus.
long weekend, so there we go. And Eric, you mentioned it earlier. We've got a UFC card in Paris coming up on Saturday.
I've got one more thing before
sure.
we jump over to that.
Yeah,
Jake.
absolutely.
Yeah. You know, you were talking about the data before. I actually have hopefully some interesting data to throw at you guys. With regard to the talent that we have seen get signed out of Dana White Contender Series for the duration of the show, right? So just to set it up a little bit, there have been 255 male fighters. I'm going to be focusing mostly on male fighters for this, who've been signed or picked by Dana White on the show. You know, there's been guys who've been, sometimes they're picked short notice after they weren't picked by Dana, or maybe you never know, that kind of thing. But when Dana picks them, 255 men have been signed going into this season. So the first, 8 years of it, right? 45 of those men were top 100 talents, according to Fight Matrix. That's 17.6% of the time, right? There has been a key demarcation point in the way they used to do it pre-COVID and the way they do it now. So before COVID, it was about 1 in 5 fighters were top 100 talent. Since COVID, especially if you don't count 2021, that's like an outlier where actually one third of the fighters, were top 100 talent. That was like they were getting a lot of really quality guys in for this one. Outside of that, it's like 1 in 10.
Ooh,
wow.
Yes.
Oh boy.
So this is why we have been flooded with a lot of talent that isn't necessarily who we would think of as UFC caliber that gets thrown into these Apex cards. That has been a big issue, and I think the data really is bearing that out. What do you guys think of that?
I think a large part of that has to do with the the prospects aren't going to Contender Series because the pay is so bad. They could go because if you earn a contract, you're signing on for 10 and 10. I know for a fact that agents hate Dana White's Contender Series. They don't even want their clients to even go that day. If they get the offer, they'll reject it. Because the upside isn't that high. Okay, so you win the fight and then you get a contract that's below market value. So I think that could feed into that issue that
I'm sure it's a piece
mentioned.
of it, 100%.
Yeah. The 10 and 10 thing needs to go. I mean, we'll see what happens with the rights deal. Like, that seems to be one of the things that we're really waiting on. It looks like
I'll give you this, though.
Yeah.
I'll give you this. This season, Season 9, we're only 4 episodes in. It's out of 10, so there's still a long way to go. But out of this season, there have only been 16 fighters selected by Dana White, right? 5 of them have been top 100 talent. So we're talking about almost 1 in 3 again this year. Wow. And that's actually, there were only 5 selected all of last year, 3 the year before, and then 5 again the year before that. So we're already matching or potentially on course to exceed what has been done. So they are getting a little bit more of that, again, top 100 talent. And the reason I bring up top 100 talent is because if we're talking about the UFC, we really ought to be thinking about the best fighters in the world. And if you're in the top 100 in the of the world, UFC generally has about half of those fighters, right? Like somewhere in that range. So that means you're already walking in with someone who belongs in the top 50 of the UFC. And sometimes they have like 100 plus welterweights, 100 plus lightweights and that kind of thing. So you're talking about some people who really belong. And that's what I think is interesting about, again, that designation of top 100.
I think that tracks though, and I think this is sort of what I was trying to get at with that mumbling question I asked earlier. Is if
Happens
they're
to us
going
all.
if they're going on the road and they're doing less shows in the Apex, that they have to get better quality talent, because like you were saying, they really do have to make those shows that are on the road better. So one question that I was going to ask is, are they signing either less people from the Contender Series, which it sounds like this is a bit of a lower number year.
More.
Oh,
No, they're signing more.
Oh,
It's
wait.
gone up almost every single year, except for last year. There was a dip because they signed almost everybody the year before.
okay. So in that case, then the roster is just getting bigger, unless they're cutting more.
They also are cutting people.
Yeah.
They're cutting a lot. They're finding, again, that cheap talent that you're talking about there, Eric. I mean, if they can get a lot more cost-effective talent to fill the lower portions of the card, why wouldn't they do that? They love to pinch that little penny, right, as much as they can. We've seen that. It's
They
a
signed
clear,
4 fighters.
Yeah.
It is a very clear. Yeah, they signed 4 fighters almost every week. They're going to sign 4 or 5.
Yeah.
The B Joe Pyfer year, they only signed Joe Pyfer that day. I believe every other week they signed like 5. I think it was
They did
every
sign
other
5. They did sign 5 yesterday. They signed 2 from one fight. I believe it was the first fight. I missed it. They said it was cool, but it ended in a majority decision. But yeah, they took both of those guys and then the last 3 winners.
Yeah, but no,
And when you look at this coming week too, like I was looking ahead, and there's only one top 100 male on the card at all. That's Larian Douglas. Comes from LFA. He's solid talent, right? We're talking about somebody, again, top 100, probably really belongs. He's been booked against Cam Teague, who is outside of the top 500. This, on the surface, to me, looks like one of those, we're trying to set him up for a nice win and sign the guy. I don't know the odds, and I honestly am not as familiar with either of these fighters beyond what I just gave you. So it's possible there's more to Cam Teague than I know, but that's what it looks like just based on those particular numbers.
Alrighty. Well, I think this was a pretty comprehensive breakdown, so hopefully you at home enjoyed it. Let us know if you guys watch the Contender Series and what your thoughts are. Maybe if you don't watch the Contender Series, maybe what they could do to make you want to watch the Contender Series. So yeah, let us know in the comments. And now it is finally time to get to UFC Paris. Sorry for cutting you off, Scott, before. I know that. Very glad that you did share that data. But let's keep going, my man. Let's dive right into UFC Paris. We've got Nassourdine Imavov taking on Caio Borralho in what we initially thought was pretty much a done deal for a title eliminator. I know we recently did an episode talking about just how stacked the top of welterweight is, and that has proven true recently middleweight. Sorry, thank you so much for correcting me, Scott. Reinier de Ritter and Anthony Fluffy Hernandez both recently had some great wins, and now they're set to fight each other. So it's pretty up in the air whether this one is going to be a title eliminator or potentially Reinier de Ritter and Fluffy Hernandez. So my question to you guys now, and Eric, I'll start with you, get your thoughts. Do you think that this one is more number one contender worthy than that fight between de Ritter and Fluffy Hernandez?
Short answer is yes. And then that doesn't necessarily mean that that's who I want to fight Khamzat Chimaev next, but I think that Nassourdine Imavov versus Caio Borralho, I think those two fighters pose the biggest threat to Khamzat Chimaev's reign as a champion. Not to say that Anthony Fluffy Hernandez or Reinier de Ritter won't have no chance to beat him or anything like that. In terms of the betting odds, and these actually kind of surprised me, but there's betting odds out on potential opponents for Khamzat Chimaev. And you'd be surprised, Khamzat is a massive favorite over everybody, like so massive that basically the odds makers don't think he really has a chance against any of them. So I thought that was kind of crazy.
To lose, you mean?
Sorry, say that again?
He doesn't have a chance to lose.
Chance to lose. Sorry, yeah.
Yeah.
No, like everyone else, like wouldn't have a chance. I'll pull him up really quick, but it is pretty wild. So for me, I'm looking at this fight. I see Nassourdine Imavov, who's 6'3". He has had moments of excellence in the octagon before, especially against Jared Cannonier. He's had moments of excellence. He is very good on the feet, and he is not a fish on the ground. So for me, I look at that matchup and I say, hey, maybe Khamzat Chimaev doesn't get him down and Imavov did get taken down by Brendan Allen at one point and pushed into side control, so that's obviously something that he will need to correct a little bit. That was only one takedown though. Previous fighters, it was really tough to take him down. Previous fighters had a really hard time. Phil Hawes, another one who had a really tough time. This is a very, very fun fight this weekend. I'm really excited to watch it. It's 5 rounds, and I expect a war, honestly.
Yeah, very excited for it. Scott, what about you on your thoughts versus this fight versus De Ritter and Fluffy Hernandez? There you go again.
So on the whole, I agree with Eric. I agree that this really ought to be kind of the one we're looking at for the number one contender. But it's funny enough, I actually agree with it for almost the opposite reason. I think it has much more to do with the resumes, make them more qualified. And I actually think that the winner of that RDR and Fluffy fight, I think the winner of that fight has a better chance of beating Chimaev, funny enough.
The odds makers
than the winner
agree
of this fight.
Oh.
They do.
Odds makers agree with you. So Fluffy Hernandez is plus 350 to beat Hernandez. That's the best odds. Reiner De Ritter is plus 500, but Nasruddin Imavov is plus 440, and Kai Borralho is plus 410. So
yeah, I mean that makes sense to me for a lot of reasons. But I mean, again, the reason why I would think this one ought to be the number one contender fight, I think it's much more contender worthy, is, I mean, it's the resume. Imavov has the best wins, particularly knocking out Israel Adesanya earlier this year. That is the most impressive win at middleweight of any of these 4 men, right? I think probably pretty easily. Borralho, 16-fight win streak coming in. If he goes in there and he beats Imavov, then he has that top win, right? Like we're already he's basically snatching the chi and becoming more powerful as a result, right? I think that's how I look at it. Whereas I just don't see how a win for RDR over Fluffy or vice versa is what's going to be the one that it's like, yes, this is the win, unless we're talking about aesthetics. One of them goes in and looks more impressive than the winner of this fight. Different story.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is something that I feel like we have kind of referenced a little bit recently, is the UFC's kind of gone to more an operation of what have you done for me lately? Like, we have a very short memory in MMA. I feel like maybe we is the wrong word, but the fan base of
the
MMA.
Collective MMA community has an extremely short memory.
Yes.
And it kind of frustrates me because I don't. But you're right. Absolutely, Jake.
Yeah. Like, and as you mentioned, Nasruddin Imavov's win over Israel Adesanya was back in February, yet it is still, I would agree with you, the most impressive win that any of these 4 guys probably have. And he is not even guaranteed a title shot if he wins this fight. So I think that goes to show. I saw your reaction there, Scott. I think that goes to show just how much that plays a factor into this one. But I really appreciate.
I feel like I do feel like it's less the what have you done for me lately. I mean, there's certainly an element of that, but I really do feel like it has much more to do with who's got the one we could sell the highlight more, right?
Exactly.
Because that's the one that's going to stick better. Yeah, and it's funny because obviously the fight with Adesanya was a big fight, but and there is that, it's not lately, but it is a big highlight over a name that the UFC was putting their bread and butter behind for quite a while during the COVID times. Right?
Absolutely, yeah. So I think that's a very fair point.
But one thing I'll say is that Imavov, came into the UFC, I believe it was 24, and he is really improved. Like, he has got dramatically better. I think that Imavov is a really scary guy for this division. And I think that, I'll get to this in 3 bets in 3 minutes, but this is going to be a really, really interesting test. He's a betting underdog, and I'm shocked by it.
Looking forward to it. But listen, we have some other fights to talk about that are going to be going on in Paris on Saturday. Patricio Pitbull is going to be having another fight against Lucien Keita. And Lucien Keita, you might not know him because he is a debuting UFC fighter. So I just want to get your guys' thoughts on putting such a legend like Patricio Pitbull on a card against someone who's making their UFC debut. Scott, what do you think about that?
So I want to preface this by saying Lucien Keita is a very, very, very excellent signing by the UFC. He was a monster in Octagon over in Czech Republic where they do those fights. Where they're based out of anyway. Great signing. I think it's utter nonsense to put Patricio Pitbull against him. Fans have been waiting for 15 years for this guy come over from Bellator and have all these dream matchups that some of them we really just missed out on. I mean, it's not going to fight Jose Aldo. That's not happening. Some of these ships have sailed, right? But at least come in there and fight like the UFC guys. Let's see how he does against UFC guys. We had 2. He's already had 2 fights in 5 months. This is his 3rd fight in 5 months, guys.
Yeah.
He's 38. Or maybe 37. He's 37, 38. He's an old guy and he's still in there and he doesn't care. He's just getting in there. I just don't understand why we're booking this fight. I don't think it's going to give Keita as much shine as it could to come in and fight some of these top guys like he could, because Patricio Pitbull is not established enough in the UFC for their, the UFC only crowd. I think if let me give you a fight that I'm curious what you guys would have thought of it if they booked it for Pitbull. And you could keep him on this card. You could keep this on this European card. Patricio Pitbull against Arnold Allen. What do you guys think of that?
Ooh, I think that's a tough fight for Pitbull to be.
What's Arnold Allen up to?
But I'm okay with them. Give him the tough fights. Yeah. It's not about protecting Pitbull. It's about I want to see him against the UFC guys.
Yeah, I guess because
what's Arnold Allen even up to?
That's a good question. So I think that's a good shout.
He doesn't have anything. I haven't heard that name in a few months.
Yeah,
I'm not sure if there's a health situation. To be honest, I did not get to dive deeper into it. I don't remember where he's at with regard to that. But I mean, that'd be a fantastic fight. You don't have to put Pitbull back in there. He just fought. Yeah. It's not like he necessarily has to get in there. So you can save him. And he's a Brazilian. Why are you putting him in Paris? It doesn't. I know. Probably he's fought there before because of Bellator. But
but I agree with what you were saying about you don't have to protect Patricio Pitbull. Like that ship sailed when that Yair fight happened. Let him. I guess
he didn't need to ever.
Yeah,
he's a legend.
Yes, exactly. His legacy is set in stone. This is just icing on the cake, essentially. So I definitely like that fight. But just to get your thoughts quickly, Eric, on that matchup with Lucine Keita.
I'll give you the breakdown on Keita really quick. Crazy knockout power in both hands. Has actually this is an example of a fighter who the UFC probably was offering him contender series fights. PFL was trying to get him. UFC, he says the UFC was trying to get him for a long time and he was rejecting it. He really enjoyed fighting at Octagon and the fans and all that good stuff. Really good knockout power, crazy pace. He's relatively untested in terms of grappling against the elite level, so that I guess would be the upside of taking this fight against a Patricio Pitbull. But for me, I agree with you, Scott. Like I don't really understand why. I don't really like it for either fighter. I don't think that Keita gets a big bump by knocking him out, and I don't think that Pitbull should be taking this fight anyway. I guess maybe stopping this guy's run, but he hasn't even had a run yet because this is his debut. If this wasn't his debut, I'd be a little bit more interested. But that's your breakdown on this fight. Pitbull's a big underdog, and basically this guy. I mean, if he's as good as everybody says he is, I mean, Pitbull's beaten UFC level talent now, so this is quite the indictment by the odds makers, putting him as a minus 250 favorite in his debut fight against a crafty veteran who has UFC win.
Wait, he's a favorite, really?
Oh, he's Keita 27, dude. He is on the rise. You watch. I mean, I'm not saying he's going to win this fight, but if he does and he looks impressive, watch out. I mean, we're looking at somebody who could really be going places at 145 pounds.
Wow.
Yeah. A lot of respect for this name.
Wow.
Yes, and a lot of respect from the odds makers as well.
Okay, fair enough.
And weirdly enough, this is not even the co-main event on this card. It's all the way, like, as I saw it online before. I don't know if this is the final bout order, but it is the opener of the main card. Why are we doing that?
No.
I know why they're doing the co-main. The co-main makes some sense. That's Benoit Saint-Denis against Michael Hoofy. That is all action, and it's a French fighter. I mean, of course you do that. I get that. But why is he opening it up? I mean, maybe it's the action that they're expecting. But that's like a main card of a pay-per-view move.
How many fights are on the main card this weekend? Because I thought I had seen it sixth from there's okay. So then there you go. I was going to say, why would fight one? It's a 6-5 main card. Okay, that's crazy. That is crazy.
I don't know. Maybe it's to get people's TVs turned on earlier. Who knows?
It's probably something to that effect. But like, I feel like my 2 cents of having watched this product for a very long time, that works much better when we're talking about, let's say, something that's on a major network if they're on ABC, if they're on Fox, or when they're going to be on, CBS at times in the next coming regime, right, in the next coming era.
Yeah.
Or if it's on a pay-per-view card, like you definitely want to start it off with some action, jazz them up. I don't know how many people are doing that with an afternoon on a college football Saturday to do that. I just don't know how that works, and maybe the UFC does, but it looks curious to me.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, talking about some of the other fights that are on this card, and we'll get to fights to watch, but just you mentioned it before. Patricio is like one of the lone Brazilian fighters in this card that's set in Europe with a lot of European talent. How do you guys like the card quality, specifically from the European talent perspective? I'm going to start with Erich because Scott is, he's the data cruncher. So I'm going to go with Erich first before you give your your thoughts, Scott.
We've heard enough of Scott now.
No.
I know, I'm tired of me.
No, this is a really good fight. I actually think that, low key, I think that Nasruddin Imavov versus Kai Borralho could, on a bad pay-per-view, could be like the co-main event of a pay-per-view. Like on like a lower level pay-per-view. Because I think that this fight, the amount of stakes that are at this fight, it doesn't really get higher. Like there is so much to prove because it's not only win and get the title shot, it's win impressively and get the title shot. It's a little bit different, right? Because there's that other fight with Fluffy and RDR that's just hanging out there. So from a whole card perspective, you have some really good fights. You have William Gomes versus Robert Ruchala is really interesting. And there was another one on here, Andres Gustafsson versus Renat Fakhradanov, which is very interesting as well. And then you're opening the card as well with Sean O'Banion versus Sam Hughes. Sam Hughes is obviously American, but Sean O'Banion is European as well. When you look at other cards, in other promotions, maybe like a PFL Europe, PFL Africa, a lot of really regional talent, whereas here it's not so much, right? There's a lot of real UFC contenders on here. I mean, Fakhradanov has a really impressive record, and he is the second.
It is largely a European card, though. They definitely
100%.
stacked it with talent that's from the region, from the general region of Europe, right?
100%. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, if you look at it from like what the other cards do, it's way more regional than this. This is legit UFC level talent.
Yeah, and Scott, just your thoughts before we get to your guys' fights to watch.
So I do like the collection of European talent here. I don't think that they, misplaced like a fight that's on like another card somewhere else in the world coming up or just recently. I don't think that we kind of lost out on something like that. There is one fighter that I kind of wish they had put here instead of in the fight that they made, and that's Jakub Wicklacz. I'm sure I butchered that, but the Polish signing that they just made, who's going to fight Patchy Mix in Las Vegas, I would rather have seen him come to this card. Probably against a different opponent. Patchy Mix is another one who I'd rather see him fight UFC guys. He didn't earn the right to move up necessarily because he lost that fight and it really was not impressive. But I'd rather see him go against someone else from the UFC and say, okay, how does this guy do against this talent, right? So that would have been a really good fighter, I think, to move over to here. Poland is, it's not right next to France, but it is regional enough. I think you could certainly attract a crowd to come in from that, at least a small contingent there. But otherwise, they got all the French fighters that they really could on here, save for Manon Fiorot, who they moved over to the Vancouver card that they've got coming up against Jasmine Jasudavicius. That's a Canadian matchup, so they kind of went with that right instead.
Fair enough. Well, Erich, I heard you mention your fight to watch a little bit earlier, Andreas Gustafsson versus Renat Fakhradanov. Could you tell us a little bit more about that one?
Yes, that's my fight to watch of the weekend. Renat Fakhradanov, say what you will about him, 23-1-1. And he's got the draw to Alessio dos Santos, and a lot of people say that he robbed Nicholas Dalby. He did not. That's terrible to even say. But Carlos Leal, he did get a little bit lucky on that decision on that one. So, say what you will. He's 23-1-1. And he's facing Andres Gustafsson, who has, let's call it, interesting marketing tactics. The way he markets himself. He says he's going full R word every time he gets into the octagon, and it got people talking. It got people talking. Got some bets on that one as well, and I think that's a really good second fight on the prelims. 14 fights. Yeah. That second one's pretty solid, man. 23-1-1 on the prelims is solid.
Yes. All right. And Scott, what is your fight to watch?
I went with the co-main here because we didn't really give it much shine. Benoit Saint-Denis against Michael Hoofy. I think everyone is looking forward to this. I'm sure. Mauricio Hoofi, excuse me, my fault.
Okay.
It's right there, and I don't read right. Mauricio Hoofi. I mean, this fight. Who is looking at this fight and it's like, yeah, that's going to be a boring decision. This is going to be
No.
nuts.
It's gonna be sick.
Everyone's looking forward to it. I don't need to do much more.
One of the funniest things that I heard when getting prepared for this card was somebody said that Benoit Saint Denis fights like slow Aaron Pico, and I laughed out loud.
Wow.
Very, very similar styles. One of the funniest things I've ever heard.
All right. That's
ridiculous.
an interesting breakdown. Well, Scott, we were talking about some crunching numbers beforehand. What is the event rating for Paris?
We've got a 44 here. I think it is a great main event, and that bears out. That carries the weight here a lot. Tons of talent throughout, like Eric has kind of referenced. We're only talking about the two lowest rated fights on this whole card, this 14 fight bout. They are on the main card, so that actually drags down the rating a little bit, that they were positioned higher up. But the co-main is also, it's only the fourth highest rated fight. So as much as I love it as a co-main and make total sense, that also is a minor ding to the rating. So what I would say is a 44 here probably undersells the quality of this card, even from a ranked competition standpoint. I think this is a really deep card. I love it.
I was gonna say that
totally.
surprises me. I would have expected it to be a little bit higher, but you gave a pretty good breakdown on how that number got arrived at.
Sure.
To wrap up UFC Paris, we've been mentioning it throughout the whole show. Eric, it is time for your 3 bets in 3 minutes. You ready to go?
Let's do it. And let's talk about 3 bets in 3 minutes. And we're going to jump right into the main event here. We're going to talk about Nasruddin Imavov versus Kai Borralho. Really interesting fight over at the middleweight division, title eliminator. I'm expecting this to be a dog fight, an absolute war over at middleweight. And for a large portion of the reason is that I think Imavov is the better striker here. And, at plus 110, I love that value. And Kai Borralho, he's getting better, right? He is the fighting nerds guy, and he hasn't fought in a year, so who knows how good he's gotten. My thing about Imavov is he's been in the UFC for a long time. And while he was losing all those fights, and he had a war with Phil Hawes, right, many, many moons ago, Imavov's gotten a lot better, and Imavov is not a fish on the ground by any means. He has stopped takedowns from, Jared Cannonier. I had a real hard time with him last time out. So for me, I think Imavov's the better fighter here all around. Actually, these odds are just incorrect. I think Imavov should be the favorite. I think Imavov's a good bet at money line price, and I'm going to target all the overs that I can possibly get on significant strikes. I'm going to do same game parlays. I'm going to do whatever I need to get value on this fight. So Imavov 78.5 significant strikes would available right now. I would look to target 100 plus on DraftKings when it comes out, and the same thing on the other side for Borralho. I think that he'll be competitive on the feet, but I don't even see a finish. I think Imavov by decision's the official pick, but I'll take the money line as well. Go to the co-main event: Benoit Saint Denis versus Mauricio Hoofi. Huffy's gonna clip him here, just to be super clear. Benoit Saint Denis, if I believed for a second that he would go in there and grapple immediately and try to get a submission, I'd be like, okay, fine, maybe Benoit Saint Denis, who's a former French Special Forces, would do that. But Benoit Saint Denis is just too interested in firefights. He loves them. It's kind of like Aaron Pico in a way, I guess. For me, I think Mauricio Hoofi gets it done early. Benoit Saint Denis doesn't faint enough when he's coming into danger zones, and that's a real problem, man. He's just gonna get clipped, and Mauricio Hoofi kind of got that like Conor McGregor counter-striking style. I think that he just knocks him down with a left hook and ends the fight in the first round. I'll take Hoofi by knockout, first round, plus 380. Going further down onto the card, and we talked about this fight a little bit already. We did not talk about this fight, excuse me. Marcin Tybura versus Ante Delica. They fought actually back in 2015 over at M1. Tybura won by TKO. It was a little fishy though, with a leg injury. So Delica obviously trying to get that one back, but I'm always been a Tybura guy. I have a very good feel for who he can beat and who he cannot beat. I think Tybura is going to be able to get some takedowns here. I think Tybura is going to be able to manage distance well enough that Delica can't get off his strikes. I'm going to take Tybura here by decision, plus 240. The fight to go the distance is plus 120. I think that's solid value as well. But I'm going to go a little bit more specific. I'm going to take Tybura by decision, plus 240. Those are your 3 bets in 3 minutes.
Alrighty, thank you so much for that, Eric. And we've gone through the big items of the week. Scott, why don't you break it down for quick hits?
So let's start off the top of the quick hits here this week with John Jones, who is no longer facing misdemeanor charges in New Mexico relating to the February incident in which he had been accused of leaving the scene of a vehicular accident. Sounds familiar, but again, state dismissed all remaining charges. He is legally in the clear. Going over to a little more fight-related stuff, but it's still not quite a fight because Alex Pereira, we're talking about here, he admitted on the Ariel Helwani show this week that he was not actually hacked. Earlier this year, when a social media post of his voiced frustration with the UFC, calling the situation that made him write a quote impulsive post. That was a miscommunication, according to his coach and interpreter, Plinio Cruz. Now we've got some real fight stuff here. The Brandon Royval, he is going to go against Manel Kape. They have rebooked their pivotal flyweight fight that was originally going to happen over at UFC 316. It's not going to happen at the Garden card like I was kind of willing to existence last week. They will headline the final UFC card of the ESPN era on December 13th at the Apex. This is the final fight of the UFC ESPN era. Much closer to now, we're talking about Rob Font got his opponent after Raul Rosas Jr. fell out last week. He's going to be facing David Martinez at Noche UFC 3 next weekend. Unfortunate news for Marina Moroz. She has been suspended for a year after a failed test for meldonium. This is coming from the UFC's anti-doping partner, Combat Sports Anti-Doping, or CSAD. It is very sad, isn't it? She was already on a 3-fight losing skid coming into this. Hadn't fought since March 2024. Doesn't really bode well for her future with the promotion, of course. And lastly, this is a little more uplifting. The Smashing Machine, the biopic about UFC Hall of Famer Mark Kerr. It is set for wide release on October 3rd, but where we're talking about it right now is it just premiered at the Venice Film Festival and received a 15-minute standing ovation, one of the longest ones at the festival. It was a really touching moment for, Mark Kerr, for the star Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, as well as the director of the film as well, Benny Safdie, right? It's one of the Safdie brothers. I've now mistaken that, but that's all we got for the week. Thank you, guys.
Alrighty, thank you so much for that, Scott. And guys, it is time to move on to the final round, where we finally have all three of us back together to recap some fights that we watched for homework. Scott, do you think we should start off with the homework assignment from last week or the one before that to get Erich's thoughts?
I want to know what Erich thought of those fights from a couple weeks ago, because he unfortunately had to duck out last week. He was a little scared to talk about some of the bets that didn't go as well for him. But what did you think of the fights? What did you think of the fights, Erich?
Yeah, Kiefer Crosby by decision is the worst bet that I've ever put out. I apologize to everybody. It was a 20-1 underdog, but the worst bet I've ever put out. It was a donation to the sports books. Yeah, so the homework assignment the week before was a bunch of fights, right? It was the I know McGregor.
It was like the dominant challenger fights.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. So Conor McGregor, Eddie Alvarez, super fun. Rich Franklin versus Anderson Silva. I remember watching that one the first time I watched it, and I was like, oh my god, Anderson Silva is that guy.
Just a terror.
John Jones's submission over Shogun Hua actually gets better with age. That was one thing that, because I made sure I watched that one back. That performance gets better with age because you don't see submissions like that at all, really. Like where they just to the ground. Like I can't remember the last time I saw that. Another one that sticks out to me.
Knockout. Am I wrong on that one?
Yeah. Wait. Are you thinking the right fight?
Are you thinking Machida, right?
Oh, I'm thinking of Machida. Which one's that one?
The Machida fight was he was a challenger. Yeah, I don't think we did that one yet. Did you? That's okay.
I actually get them confused all the time.
Yeah, Machida, and then this one was the back fist. This one was the back fist. All right, yeah, my bad.
No worries.
Keep going. It's all good.
We'll keep going.
Sorry, guys.
We'll move to the next one.
But yeah, Amanda Nunes, Bichette, also a really fun fight. Joanna Jędrzejczyk versus Carlos Esparza. Don't remember too much about that one. 2 weeks ago, I know
it was 2 weeks ago, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it's 2 weeks ago. I forget. Conor McGregor.
Fast forward though.
Obviously all-time great stuff.
we know you're very well versed in that one. So.
Yeah, all-time great. That was my 21st birthday.
Oh, there we go. All right. Well, let's move into some more Conor McGregor. I guess I'll go first, considering I know Erich knows
this was
fights.
For you.
Yes.
This was sent for you because you're not a Conor casual. You are a COVID casual.
Yeah. I don't know which one's better. They're more of the same, I guess. But listen, that
it's
first
just when you came in.
Yes. Yeah. That first fight, man, things really went south really quick. Like Conor was looking great, and then things just fell apart. You know, it was wild. I don't know if it was a cardio thing because it wasn't like super deep into the fight. Although I believe hearing some people talk about that maybe it was the cardio that needed some work, or I think maybe he was just getting clipped by Nate and things just kind of started going south. And then yeah, it looks like.
So just to jump in,
Yeah.
the prevailing sentiment of that fight afterwards was Conor said after the fight that he was inefficient with his energy, and that next time he would be more efficient with his energy, and that he thought that Nate would be gone by the time that he got tired, and which obviously didn't happen in the first fight.
Do you think in the second fight, Jake, that he was more efficient with his energy? Do you think we still sort of saw some similarities in the way that fight played out?
There was definitely some similarities. The difference was that he didn't get put away and he caught a second win. I mean, the announcers even said it. Like, I think that's actually
he had the time to.
Yeah, absolutely, because he had the time to recover. So I think that was definitely a bit of a difference. But I think that was aside from, say, the adversity he overcame in the Chad Mendes fight, because that was a pretty tough fight for him as far as Conor fights go. This was like he can come back and like he kind of showed that he does have the potential to have 5-round cardio, in a tough fight, which this was a tough fight. This was a dog fight, as Joe Rogan said on the broadcast. So super impressive. Great fight. I mean, when I was watching it, I was like, wow, I mean, I still got to get better with my scoring, but like Nate easily had 2 rounds. That 10-8 was not a 10-8 though. I went back and looked at the
never knocked him
scorecards.
down.
Yeah, that was an insane 10-8 to throw out there.
You don't need a knockdown, but it wasn't there.
Yeah.
It wasn't there. I didn't think it was a good score.
Sick fight.
No, none of those were 10s.
I could see why this is an all-time one. And I definitely prefer the second one to the first one. Although the first one, I know for people watching live, was absolutely
shocking,
insane. Yeah,
shocking.
He was a
mind blowing.
He was a minus 400 favorite, Conor, right? Something like that.
No one saw that coming to that degree. I think I'm sure there were people who could have predicted to a degree that would happen, but Conor was invincible at this point.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
I just add that card, the first fight that Nate and Conor fought, was the same card that Miesha Tate choked out Holly Holm. So the co-main event was when Miesha Tate choked out Holly Holm, and Holly Holm was trying to tap, I guess, but was getting rear naked choked, and as she was going out, started throwing punches. Then her arms go limp in the middle of the choke.
That's a great fight too.
Oh,
great.
Possible future homework assignment. But getting into that, Scott, what is our next assignment?
Yeah, I know we're up against it, so I'll just throw it at you. Demetrius Mighty Mouse Johnson against Ray Borg from 2017. This was Mighty Mouse gunning for the consecutive title defenses record. He'd rarely been in trouble during the first 5 years of his reign coming into this one. Borg really was just kind of like the next fresh meat available.
I'm not going to spoil anything, but I think I have an inkling as to.
I think you know what's coming, but I think
coming.
it's also a good slice of his career for you to experience.
I haven't seen the fight in the entirety, so I'll be able to absorb it in its true form.
Highlight real level stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And to wrap up this episode of Against the Cage and the final round, what happened this week in MMA, Scott?
So September 1st, 2012, a couple days ago, was the anniversary, 13 years since we had UFC 151 Jones versus Henderson, or, well, we would have, except it was canceled. It was the first UFC event that ever got scrapped 9 days before, Jake. This was supposed to happen in Vegas. John Jones was going to defend the light heavyweight title against the great Dan Henderson. Hendo gets hurt, falls out. They were trying to salvage Jones' title fight against Chael Sonnen last minute. Jones didn't play ball, so they just scrapped the whole card. This is kind of like the very beginning of the public dissonance between John and Dana White. It was really never the same after that. And unfortunately, this fight never happened. We never got Jones versus Hendo. I think that would have been fun.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, Henderson lost, kind of the wrong fights. And also Jones, he defended his belt just a few weeks later at UFC 152 in Toronto against Vitor Belfort. That was kind of like how they moved forward.
Kind of relevant to now too is Dana doesn't trust him to headline the White House card, perhaps because of something like this.
He's been burned before.
That is definitely an important moment in MMA history, Scott. So I think you hit the nail on the head on that one. And guys, that is the end of our show on Against the Cage. Scott, Eric, really appreciate you guys joining me as always. Let us know in the comments what you thought of the homework assignments, if you did all that homework, which I hope you did. But yeah, let us know what you thought in the comments, and we will see you next week.